Hello everybody, my name is Petr Koutný. Let's watch a really interesting chess video where I will show you how to play really interesting line against Italian opening. And maybe this could be a good weapon against anybody who is playing against you Italian. So from the beginning, it's of course famous four moves: e4, e5, knight c3, and now bishop c5. I think that f5 is interesting, brave, and not bad at all. So what white has to play? The worst from all moves here is knight c3, because black will simply take on e4, and if white is taking by knight, is losing piece. That's a simple, that's a strong, and that's the reason why knight c3 is not good at all. So white should think about to take on f5, play d3 and strong d4. I think that the move d4 is the strongest move here. So let's check all variations. At the end, I think that you could play this variation without any doubts and worry, and you could surprise your opponent by this gambit. So to take on f5, the best is play here e4, and white's knight has some difficulties to find a good square. Of course, knight g1 is too passive, and it's absolutely clear that this move is not the best move at all. Okay, knight g1, I think that knight f6, d5 has a drawback because of check on h5. Of course, not big issue if you are playing king e7, but that's a scary variation, and maybe it's maybe too risky. For this reason here, the best is to play knight f6, and after d3, d5, I think that everything is fine. That's a simple variation, and of course later on I will show more deeply look into this position, and you should get enough variation how to play this opening, or enough informations, of course. So shortly after move f5, to play move d3, I think that the best is to play knight f6, or you could surprise your opponent by a move bishop c5, and that's a nice trap, because maybe your opponent will play knight g5 thinking that you're losing, or he could believe that he is winning, but f4 is a big surprise. And if your opponent will play knight f7, he is nearly losing. Say this variation will give you proof why I'm telling you this story. So knight f6 and knight g4, and because of checkmate on h2, h3, and here that's everything is wrong, so maybe f3, and here is a checkmate. So but you will see everything later on, so don't worry if I am too fast, because now I'm telling you only the basic moves, and in next couple of minutes I will show everything slowly and deeply. So what we remember that we are playing move f5, and the best is here to play move d4. We could take on d4 or on e4. I think that stronger is to take on d4 than on e4, but of course I'm going to show firstly this variation, knight e5, d5, and here is a mistake to play a queen h5. Looks like white is winning, right? Because check and too many threats, but don't be surprised that after move g6, white is nearly losing. Knight f6, queen has to find a safe square, and now knight d4. You know, here, for example, knight c2 and queen checkmate on d1. A1 rook is hanging, and I think that this is a bad position for white, but that's a tricky variation, and white should play much more stronger. I think that stronger is to play bishop b5, And now bishop f4, and to take on c6 and knight f6. Don't worry about knight g6, that's funny, but sometimes you could worry about your pawn formations and double pawns, and this position is fixed without too much life. Okay, maybe you don't worry. Maybe you don't mind, but I will show maybe much more interesting variation. Anyway, knight g6 is a mistake for white because black should take one piece, second piece, and because of red, checkmate on h2. Here is a g5 and g4 as a really strong. I think that this is a funny variation, but you don't need to play it at all. You could play something else. So welcome, and let's start to watch everything deeply. We remember that bishop f5, bishop c4, of course, f5 and knight c3. It's a mistake because we are a winning piece. That's a simple, and it's not hard to remember this variation. So not knight c3 is a dangerous move to us. Another variation, of course, here is to play d3. Right? Bishop c5, it's a nice threat. As I told you, knight g5 doesn't work at all because of move f4, queen h4, knight f6, and knight g4. Checkmate on h2, f2 is under attack, and if three black pieces are attacking white's king, something went wrong for white. So maybe h3, take, and maybe here is a check, check, and checkmate. Okay, so bishop c5. Here knight g5 is good to remember move f4. Okay, so another variation waiting for us here. What's happened if white is taking on f5? I think e4 is good. We know that knight g1, d5, it's okay for black. I think that queen e2 is a good answer for d5, and maybe to go to f7. It's funny and not bad at all. But I think that the strongest answer here is knight d4. Be careful, this is a trap, and it's a danger to take a knight on d4. It's a danger, maybe you could play, but I don't know if you are happy here. So knight f6 is a good. To take on d4 is a check on h5. That's a danger. And here white should take. And now g7. And here, I don't know, maybe white's queen is not safe at all, but it's a risky variation, and I don't know why to play such a risky game. So that's a briefly everything what is interesting, and now let's check all variations step by step. So we remember that the d3 or d4 are the best moves at all. I believe that the move, okay, to take on f5 for one more time, knight d4, or okay, knight g1 firstly. Knight f6 makes sense to bring knight to f6 and to avoid check on h5. d3, d5, bishop b5, and to take on f5 is okay. To take on e4 makes sense, and for example knight f3, bishop c5. I think that the main plan here for black is to attack a square on f2. You playing smoothly, you are going to bring every move, every piece to game, and I think that if you are black, you are happy here. Short castle makes sense, and knight c3, maybe to take on f3, knight e4, and I think that everything is fine. So that's only answer how to play if white is playing in knight g1. Maybe much more interesting is knight d4, right? So we remember that to take this knight, it's risky for these moves. So much more interesting or stronger is knight f6, and to prepare move d5, take on c6, d5, bishop f5, bishop c5, and nearly we are in the same position. After a short castle, we are going to attack square on f2. Two bishops are strong bishops. Knight on e4 is strong. Okay, maybe we have double pawns, c7, c6, but doesn't mind. I think that this game is double-edged, and we could enjoy this position. It's open position without too much theory, and it's up to you how you are going to play this game in the future. So I think that for this reason, to take on f5 doesn't mind at all. So firstly, move d3. Bishop c5 makes sense. You could play, of course, knight f6 and bishop b4. Some players are worried about bishop c5 here because of bishop g5 and knight d5. I think that you should not be worried because you could play move f4 in the future. But for this reason, after move d3, bishop c5, you could play, of course. Say to take here on f5, you are playing d5, bishop b5, knight e7, take on e5, short castle, and yes, even looks like you have problems. You don't have problems at all, because now it's a big surprise. To take on f2 is the best moves here, and I think that White's king, it's not safe at all. Here is a checkmate on f2, here is a check and piece on a4, and I think this is a good position. So maybe it's a good idea to watch this video twice or more times, and to remember all variations, but it's not such a difficult, usually you are playing by the same way. Bishop c5, and here I think that knight g5 is f4, we know it. Knight f7, queen h4, so that's not difficult to us. I think that bishop c5, short castle, knight f6, knight c3, d6, bishop g5, maybe it's a worry. It's not worry because you're playing knight a5. Knight d5, you're going to exchange this dangerous light squares bishop, and after c6 you are taking by f pawn. The best answer here is to play bishop e3, but somebody will play you bishop h6, and after f4 nearly this bishop on h6 is trapped. And still, you have two bishops, open positions, you are going for a long castle, and you could start attack against the White's king. I think that this is a good position. What do you think? Alright, so d3, it's not such a difficult to play. I think that the critical move is d4, and that's why we are going to watch this variation. Some people will tell you that it's good to take on e4, but maybe you should not enjoy this position. Bishop b5. The threat is, of course, check on h5. Okay, not here, because we know that this variation is working for us very well. So now bishop b5 is the best. Queen d6, c4, knight c3, a6, and I don't know if you enjoying this position if you're black, because you have double pawns, your position is fixed, and maybe white should play against pawn on a c6 or c7. Maybe you don't mind, but I'm worried about this kind of positions. And for this reason, I think that much more interesting here is to take after d4 on d4. And here we are in the last crossroad of this opening, and what to play. Of course, knight d4, or e will take on f5 or e5. Okay, let's go step by step. Knight is taking on d4. I think that the best is knight f6 because of threat queen on h5. That's of course usually good to look for this threat. And okay, because pawn on e4 is hanging, I think that makes sense to take on f5, d5, take, and take. Yes, this endgame is full of life. Full of life, and I think that black pieces are doing a good job. What do you think? And it's not easy for white to play this position because another rook is going to e8 or f8 or everything is possible. That's a good compensation for black. Yes, right. Of course, it's up to you if you are playing this position like this, because after e5 you could play something like this. Once again, short castle, bishop d7, bishop e7, and you're going for a long castle. Why you not worry after move knight g5? Because of knight f6, and here is a queen b4. Yes, maybe this position is hard to remember, but at the end all moves make sense, and black is fine. Even looks like he's not. To take the rook, you're taking bishop, and at the end you're winning knight on h8. Don't worry about it. So I think that bishop b3 is rook f8 and long castle. That's fine. And the b3 is the hardest answer. b5 is the best, and of course, just to take on the rook, not good or not scary to us. Bishop a3. Bishop a3, queen e5 to take on e7. Here is the best short castle. There is no dangerous checks, so maybe to take and you winning. So that's a messy position, but I don't believe that somebody will play against you. Just for your information, it's good to tell you something that everything this is possible, but you don't need to be worried. So d4, I think that the best is to take on d4, and to take on f5 is d5, check on e2, exchange, bishop d6, and okay, everything is fine. Knight c3, okay, if white is taking on c6, you're taking g4, short castle, bishop d7, and g6. And black is winning pawn back, because in case white is taking on f6, there is a maybe check on g4, or knight is taking on f6, and this is a open position with full compensation for a missing pawn. Right? So I think that you don't need to be worried here. So we saw everything. We should take on d4 or on e4, and here e5, we are playing d5. If white is taking on f5, we are playing d5, of course, strongly, and if knight is taking on d4, we are playing knight f6, and now d5. Now on f5, it's a funny take and long castle with full compensation for maybe missing 1 or 2 pawns. At the end, I think that this opening is not bad at all, and you could play on internet, you could play on every your chess games, and it's a good way how to surprise your opponent. It's a good way how to play interesting chess variation, which is not very well known, and of course you could enjoy chess. That's the best way how to be a stronger chess player, and that's my advice. Just enjoy, play for fun, and stay cool. So at the end, thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, feel free and press like or press follow and made my day. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye bye.